We are talking Nebraska football here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, in conjunction with SD1 Sports. We hope to bring you, and it's our attempt, the most comprehensive football coverage online, discussion, debate, and analysis. I've got Parker Gabriel with Husker Extra joining us to talk the Huskers, and Parker's joined us on a number of occasions to track Nebraska football in Scott Frost's first year. Parker, hopefully, based on what I know of the weather out your way, hopefully avoiding anything serious.
Yeah, it's been hot, 100 degrees, but College World Series just down the road's in a rain delay right now because they got big storm clouds, but we're doing okay here in Lincoln, just hot and steamy.
Exactly. So hopefully the weather works out this weekend for another Friday Night Lights. There was a camp this past weekend. Hit us with the highlights.
Yeah, so 2,200 people or so in the stands, 300 campers for Nebraska. And it's that time of year all over the country where schools are hosting camps, staffing satellite camps, trying to see a lot of kids. And Nebraska, no exception. Not quite the star power, I guess you would say, recruiting wise, that they had last year at the camp, but I think they're getting what they want to out of these weekends. They had 300 kids enrolled in a camp on Friday night, and then on Saturday they had 170 for a lineman camp that was half pads, and 350 more in a 7-on-7 tournament. So just a lot of kids, a lot of evaluation, and a lot of coaching going on these days here in Lincoln.
So we have struck up the live chat here online, and if anything breaks out interesting in regards to comments or questions, I'll pass those your way. Right now, it's just merely a Nebraska-Texas war, so we'll let that go, and we'll focus on recruiting. So Luke McCaffrey committed since the last time we talked to you. He only has 1 year of high school experience with people based on the bloodlines and the legitimate rating by the likes of 247 Sports is the #1 player in Colorado, not necessarily a hotbed for football, but when it goes to 17th rated at his position with which seems to be termed athlete at this point, and top 250 to 300 nationally, regardless of position. Obviously, he's a big get for the Huskers.
Yeah, he is. It's interesting. He's got 87 career high school passing attempts. And so he just hasn't played the position very much. But he's been on varsity at Valor Christian, which is a powerhouse in Colorado, since he's a sophomore. If you look at his numbers, it's pretty unique from a high school standpoint. He's got about 900 career receiving yards. He's got 800 career rushing yards. He's got about 900 career passing yards, and he's got 600 or 700 return yards in his career. So he's kind of been a do-it-all player. He's got a couple interceptions. He played corner when he was younger, but he told me when he committed that he's been a quarterback since he first picked up football in first grade. So when he was a sophomore, he was playing receiver because his brother Dylan was a starting quarterback. Dylan's now at Michigan. And obviously with what Max and Christian have done with their careers, and then with Ed and Lisa, both pretty good athletes in their own rights, the McCaffrey parents. So, yeah, it's the Nebraska is buying the athleticism. That's really the thing. They think they can develop the passer, and they're taking the athlete. And with a young quarterback room, their 3 scholarship guys are all sophomores or younger right now. So I think they'll tell you they like the quarterback that Luke McCaffrey is right now, but I think it's a development play too, where you've got young quarterbacks in the room, and you got a guy that you think is a dynamite athlete who maybe 3 years from now is a pretty good passing quarterback too.
And anytime the list of offers includes Ohio State, Michigan, Washington, and some others, the fan base, at least, they're excited about that, because they figure if those teams are going after him, then we should be, and we've got him, and he's committed. And then the bloodlines, if you follow college football, you know the bloodlines and where the other players in the family have gone, so you're feeling good about that. And of course, his dad was a longtime player for the Denver Broncos. So the recruiting rankings don't mean really anything at this point, but I'll just spit them out all the same. Number 10 in the Big Ten out of 14 teams, of course, here in 2019, 34th in the nation. Who are the big targets out there that may come into the fold? Or you can take this anywhere, Parker. That's the reason we have you on, to break things down. So whether it's Husker fans excited about a few recent commits in addition to McCaffrey, or some targets, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, it's interesting that, just like you said, 34th in the country and 10th in the Big Ten, and I think rivals, maybe it's their high 20s or low 30s. It's the same area, and ninth in the Big Ten. That just tells you, one, that the Big Ten's overall is recruiting at a really high level, and two, Nebraska's in sort of an interesting spot. I mean, the coaching staff feels like they're still playing catch up with the 2019 cycle, given that they got here in December, were hired in December. But it's really kind of started to come to bear a little bit this month. They've got, I think, 5 verbal commits this month alone, and a couple transfer guys still that have committed in the last 3 weeks or so that are available this fall. And so they're on a little bit of a run right now. A run they just landed a couple days ago. Ronald Tompkins, running back from Grayson, Georgia, powerhouse down there. He'd been committed to Florida State until September. Had offers from everyone in the country. Alabama, Texas A&M had just sort of tried to get in late. He had just been to Auburn and LSU recently. So they like where they're at. If you're looking for big prospects, more than maybe names in particular, it needs to be a big cycle for them on the offensive line and in the secondary. They got 9 commits right now. They got the quarterback taken care of, as we talked about with McCaffrey. You got 3 running backs in the fold already, a couple linebackers. They really want Nick Henrich, who's a 4-star inside linebacker from right down the road in Omaha. They're dealing with Notre Dame and Wisconsin Chief among the competition there for his services, and then they really will try to beef up, I think, offensive line and secondary as being some spots where they need depth quickly.
There's always going to be spotlight on Nebraska football, regardless of losses the previous years, and falling out of relevance in regards to real contention in the standings because of the name brand and because of the following and the history and so forth. But of course, Scott Frost has brought even more excitement, hope, and attention to this situation. We mentioned the quarterback situation with McCaffrey being committed for future years. I think the last time we talked, Patrick O'Brien was still in the mix. I believe he's transferred. I know that he's transferred, but I believe that we hadn't cleared that since the last time we talked. And so obviously the quarterback dynamic changes. I'm interested, because he was the front runner, why he would transfer and how this changes it, other than just making it a 2-man race.
Yeah, so Patrick O'Brien's headed to Colorado State. He announced last week. He had the only collegiate experience out of anybody in the room, but he also was the most pro style, quote unquote. Probably the least mobile is the most accurate way to put it, of the quarterbacks they had in their room. And as spring ball went along, they started out even reps for everybody, and he kind of fell by the wayside a little bit about midway through spring ball, and so that sparked his decision to transfer. They were giving him the signal, and I think told him directly that he wasn't really a fit for what they wanted to do offensively. And so, he transferred. He's off to Colorado State. Looks like a good fit for him there. It leaves Adrian Martinez, who's a early enrollee, incoming freshman, who was here for spring ball, and then Tristan Gebbia from Calabasas, who's a redshirt freshman. He would have pushed Patrick O'Brien for the backup job behind Tanner Lee last fall, but they wanted to be Mike Riley's staff wanted to preserve that red shirt with him. And so it lines up to be those two. They have a walk-on, actually, who played pretty well in the spring, Andrew Bunch, who's a sophomore, who Mario Verduzco, the quarterback's coach, says over and over again, don't forget about Andrew Bunch. So we'll see if he can hang around in there. And then they've got Noah Vedral, who's a transfer from Central Florida. He's from Wahoo, Nebraska, right down the road. He went down to Orlando to play for Scott Frost he was Mackenzie Milton's backup last year as a true freshman in 2017. So he's here. He probably has to sit out under transfer rules. I mean, that's what everyone assumes. They're looking into whether or not he could maybe get a waiver to play right away. And if he did, he would probably factor in the race just because he's got an extra year of experience in this offense on the other guys. But it seems very unlikely that the NCAA would grant him immediate eligibility. So as it stands, you think it's Adrian Martinez and Tristan Gebbia with Andrew Bunch trying to kind of stick with those guys and compete as a walk-on.
Parker Gabriel joining us to talk Nebraska football. You can join him on Husker Extra. And monitoring the chat here, we've got a big Nebraska fan who's always chiming in on all the videos. Navy Thomas 8. Curious to hear your thoughts about Rahmir Johnson, running back out of New Jersey, who committed about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, he's from Bergen Catholic High School, a powerhouse in New Jersey. Nebraska was actually there recruiting for 2018 right after they got hired, trying to land an outside linebacker by the name of Javante John Baptiste, who on signing day, it was kind of one of those wild signing day stories where Nebraska thought he was coming to Nebraska, signing with Nebraska. Signing day ceremony got knocked out by a snowstorm, and over the course of the morning wound up just changing his mind, supposedly, and signing with Ohio State. So fast forward, while they're recruiting the 2018 cycle there, they find this running back they really like. He's a four-star guy. I don't think he hasn't really been the featured back at that school yet, but he's a 10-6 guy in the 100, can really run, and sort of fits the wide open position versatility kind of situation that Nebraska really likes. So they've got 3 running backs already on board for the 2019 cycle, but they each do a little bit different things. Rahmir Johnson's 5'10 or 5'11, straight up speed and quickness guy, could probably play a little bit in the slot, probably will, just in that duck R position that you know, made the DeAnthony Thomases and Ken John Barners of the world famous at Oregon. Thomas Grayson from Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa. He's your tried and true 6'1" feature back looking guy. And then Ronald Tompkins, who we mentioned earlier from Grayson, is sort of somewhere in between 6 foot, 200 pounds, kind of a do-it-all option.
I'd like to remind everyone who's joining the live stream right now, obviously you've missed some of the conversation with Parker Gabriel, but as soon as this processes and posts, the entire conversation's on my YouTube channel at MarkRogersTV. So we've got positional battles starting in camp the first week of August, and we'll hit up Parker here for the start of some positional previews. So what do you say, front 7 on defense, Parker? Let's start defensive front, because I know that there's a lot to talk about there. Maybe not necessarily known commodities for the most part, but a lot to talk about that's going to be dependent on this defense improving quite a bit this year.
Yeah, so there's a couple. The front 7 is really interesting. They have a lot of guys on the defensive line who've played a lot of football. And the question is going to be this defense that they're going to play under Eric Shenander, who was at Oregon at the same time Scott Frost was, and then was Frost defensive coordinator the past 2 years at UCF, going to be totally different than what they played last year under Bob Diaco. It's aggressive. It's up the field. It's trying to, force a lot of turnovers and so on and so forth. So they have a lot of returning snaps on the defensive line. Mick Stoltenberg's a senior. He's probably your odds-on favorite to be the starting nose. He'll split time to some degree with a redshirt freshman named Damian Daniels, Bishop Dunn High in Dallas. So they like him. He's a huge guy, but he's never played. At the end position, the Davis brothers, Khalil Davis and Carlos Davis, Freedom Akinmaladun, they got Ben Stilley's moved from outside linebacker defensive line. They've got a ton of guys who have played a lot of snaps. And so the task for Mike Dawson, the defensive line coach, is sort of figure out roles guys that they have. So there's all kinds of moving pieces, and we didn't really get to watch much actual football in spring. So we don't really know how that's going to play out, but there's a lot of bodies up front that have played ball. Linebacker is a little bit different. They've got 2 veterans inside in Dedrick Young and Mohamed Berry, a highly touted junior college transfer into that mix too with Will Honus. So there's sort of your top 3 for 2 inside linebacker spots. Outside's a real wild card. Breon Dixon's a transfer from Ole Miss. They like him on the field side. That would be what Shaquem Griffin played at Central Florida. Similarly, not maybe undersized, but Dixon goes about 6 foot and 205, not your prototypical outside linebacker probably. But Shaquem Griffin was 6'1" and 230, and obviously he's a 4th round draft pick in the NFL draft or 5th round, and was one of the best defensive players in college football last year. So not saying Breon Dixon's going to have that kind of impact right away, but they like his athleticism at that spot. Luke Gifford's coming off of hip surgery. He's a senior producer. Probably the favorite, maybe the linebacker spot, but they've got 10 scholarship guys that are outside linebackers and a lot of names and skill sets and body types to sort of sift through to see if they can find pass rush production. That's really will be the name of the game for this group, because they were bottom of the Big Ten in sacks and tackles for loss last year. And Eric Shenander, they might give up some big plays, but he hangs his hat on get the ball back to the prolific offense as many times as he can. So it's going to be a big test to see if they can find enough pass rush juice, but they've got a lot of guys who have been on the field to try to find it with.
Yeah, in terms of production, based on what Parker just ran down, Carlos Davis at 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks last year, and Gifford coming back, limited playing time, but had 4.5 tackles for loss. So he was a bit of a disruptor on occasion there for the Huskers in 2017. And as Parker mentions, last in the Big Ten in sacks. Sacks is an overblown statistic in my book, but obviously it gives indication to how much pressure you're putting on the quarterback on other dropbacks. And the other stat that comes to mind for me, Parker, is that Scott Frost's Central Florida team was second in the nation in turnover margin last year. And this is a Nebraska program, not just last year, but going back to the arrival into the Big Ten, where they are negative 40 during that time frame. So you would think just, Scott Frost can't handle the ball for the quarterbacks and the running backs out there, but you would think that that's been an emphasis for him that he's going to bring that may make pay immediate results and dividends in 2018.
Yeah, it's interesting. The quarterbacks, you got 3 young quarterbacks that have never played in this system before going through spring ball. And Mario Verduzco, the quarterbacks coach, told us at the end of spring ball that they only had 4 interceptions thrown and 3 or 4 near misses over the course of 14 spring practices. The only turnover in the spring game was a botched trick play with a walk-on wide receiver throwing the ball down the field and it got intercepted. So the quarterbacks played really clean in the limited time that we got to see them this spring. The running backs last year, by and large, were mediocre at best production-wise, but at least they didn't turn the ball over very often. So you think just with the way that this offensive system, it's designed to be quarterback friendly, the quarterbacks seem to have picked it up okay. Obviously, it's different, when you go to the big house on September 22nd than it is playing in a scrimmage in April. But if Nebraska takes care of the ball offensively this fall, you think the defense at least must be a little bit more productive this fall than last fall. So I think you're in for, I would guess at this point that you're in to see some improvement in the turnover margin department, but given where it finished last year, that's not really that high of a bar either.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, bringing you the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry. That includes Parker Gabriel from Husker Extra. And so if you're joining us late on the live stream, obviously this will post to the YouTube channel, and you just check out the complete conversation regarding quarterbacks, recruiting, Luke McCaffrey, front 7 on defense. And Parker will hit you with one other thing brought up on the live chat, and I think we've tackled this before, but Tre Bryant seems to be a bit of a mystery. The 2 huge games coming out of the gate against, Arkansas State and Oregon, of course, on the road. 100+ yards in both games, almost 200 in the opener, and the injury seems to be a bit of a mystery. Do we know anything more?
Not really. Just the coaches keep saying he's working hard in the weight room, and that as soon as he's healthy, they'll get him on the field. The thing that I'm interested to see on this, Mark, is everybody, like in baseball, right? Like some guys, they only need 15 at-bats in spring training and they're good to go. Other guys, it takes a long time for them to ramp up, and they know that, so they play more. And Tre Bryant, the line has been that they just want to keep him as healthy as they can and try to get him to a point where he can play this season. So how much time does he need in the fall? Because it seems like if he's on a little bit of a rep count, or if he's had this chronic knee injury, if there's only so much you can get out of him as a healthy running back, how many bullets do you have to use just in practice and in spring or in fall camp to try to get him ready and then keep him healthy through a season? They have enough running backs that they shouldn't have to rely on him as a guy, like a feature back, 20 carries a game. He may never get back to that in his career. We don't really know. But if he can get healthy enough to give them something in the fall, I think they'll be really happy with that. But even that at this point, We haven't gotten any indication that he's fully medically cleared or anything like that. So it's status quo in the sense that ever since we've started chatting, Mark, it's been a big question mark, and it continues to be. So we'll just see if they can get him to a point where they think he's healthy enough to play this fall.
And definitely ever since we started chatting, Parker, I've let you know that I have been searching for quality Nebraska football coverage, and it's needed, and I got to have it. And I appreciate you jumping on as much as you do to help us break down Nebraska football. Parker Gabriel from Husker Extra.
Happy to be here, Mark. Thanks.